Hi there, Sam Moser here. Thanks for tuning into the second part of my van build series. My planning for this build really started with what kind of vehicle to use as the base for my camper. So in this video, I'm going to cover two main things from that early research. The first is why I think vans are great for full-time travel compared to RVs. The second is my findings from the research I did comparing the different cargo vans out there. For the US, this is primarily the Ford Transit, the Dodge ProMaster, and the Mercedes Sprinter. Let's go. There is a whole spectrum of types of vehicles you can travel in. The largest being an RV or large camper trailer, and the smallest being a car. I think cargo vans strike a good balance between giving you enough space to make it livable, while still being easy to drive around and park every day. I'm not trying to say that anyone could live in this amount of space, but for just the two of us and our dog, it works. So here are my reasons a van is great for full-time travel compared to an RV. And a lot of these reasons are interconnected, and also I'll try to keep this brief, because if you're watching videos on van conversions, you're probably already familiar with this. 1. Vans are easy to drive compared to a bigger rig. 2. We're able to fit in most normal-sized parking spots and parking lots. I realize this starts to become a little different with some of the more extended length vans, but for our van, parking in normal parking lots hasn't been an issue. Parking garages are out of the question due to the height, but that hasn't been a problem. And by the way, our van is the 148-inch wheelbase Transit with the high roof, but not the extended length body. 3. RVs are generally more dependent on RV parks or campgrounds with camper hookups available, unless your RV is set up for boondocking, which leads to my next point. 4. Vans are easier to set up for boondocking. Boondocking means dispersed camping or camping outside of an established campground with hookups for RVs. Our van is fully self-contained and doesn't require any connections for electricity or water. This makes it easier to find spots to camp for free, which saves a lot of money. 5. You can access a lot more spots. We camp in a lot of spots out in nature, often down rough, unpaved roads, and vans can access more spots than bigger rigs, where the length, ground clearance, and tight turns start to become more of an issue. Also, if we do end up down a bad road, it takes much less space for a van our size to turn around. 6. Stealth. If you're familiar with cargo van conversions, then you can probably tell a camper van from a work van from some of the common giveaways. But in general, our van looks plain enough that most people don't realize it's a camper and are surprised to see what's inside. At the very least, it stands out a lot less than a full RV does. 7. I think a cargo van is about the smallest you can go and still have most of the amenities you need to live comfortably. So that's my take on it. There's definitely trade-offs in terms of space, but like I said, it works for us. Okay, so next thing is a comparison between the different vans out there. So once I knew I wanted a cargo van, I began comparing the options. In the US, the main ones are the Ford Transit, the Dodge ProMaster, the Mercedes Sprinter, and also the Nissan NV Cargo. In general, these vans are all fairly similar, but there are lots of small differences and trade-offs between the different options. Here's my take on a comparison of them. All four of these come in various size configurations. Let's start with the length. All of these vans come in multiple lengths except for the Nissan NV Cargo van. It only comes in a length about equal to the shortest version of the other vans. I found this a little too short and ruled out the Nissan van based on that. I also test drove the Nissan and didn't like the feel and visibility in the cab. It does have a high roof available, and many people have built nice campers with them, but for the rest of my comparison, I'll mainly be talking about the other three. The Transit, ProMaster, and Sprinters all come in 2 different wheelbase lengths and 3 different body lengths. Essentially, each has a short wheelbase option and a long wheelbase option, with a body length corresponding to it. And on each model's long wheelbase variant, there is an extended body length. The actual terms the OEMs use for the different options vary, but this is how I will refer to them. Technically, the ProMaster has a 3rd wheelbase length, but the shortest doesn't come with a high roof option, so I'm not counting that here. Here's an overview of the different interior lengths available among these vans. The Transit and ProMaster sizes are pretty similar, except for on the extended body option, where the Transit is over a foot longer. Sprinters give the most length across the board. When I first started planning this build, I wasn't sure exactly what size I would need. After I started drawing out some initial layout ideas, I was able to figure out I would need something with between 10 foot and 11 foot of interior length to have space for everything I wanted. So from there I knew a long wheelbase, regular body Transit or ProMaster would be about the length I needed. The extended body vans are great if you want more interior space, but the trade-off is that they get a little harder to park and maneuver in smaller spaces. If a lengthwise bed or shower are a must for you, then you'll probably want to strongly consider a van that gives at least 12 foot inside. This is why it's important to have an idea of how you want to lay out your van before you purchase. Another thing to note about the extended body length vans is that on some of them the tail hangs out past the rear wheels quite a bit. This means it can end up dragging a little if you happen to be on a dirt road with a steep transition on an incline or decline, and that's not great for your van. I think the extended body Transits and Sprinters suffer from this the worst. Height. All three have a roof height available that will allow for most people to stand. The ProMaster and Sprinter only have two roof height options, low and high, so it's straightforward. If you want to be able to stand, then you need the high roof. The Transit comes in three roof heights, low, medium, and high, two of which might allow you to stand depending on your height. The medium roof Transit gives you about 5 foot 10 inches inside. I'm 5 foot 8 inches tall, so I figured I could get away with a medium roof if I was careful to build the floor and ceiling very thin. I test drove and stood in a medium roof and could stand, but not with that much extra room above my head. Keep in mind that the roof curves downward toward the sides, so the measurement is only at the middle. For us, being able to stand inside the van was important, since we spend so much time in here. I ended up being able to find a high roof Transit and I'm really happy about that. The high roof gives plenty of headroom, feels more open, and allows the upper cabinets to be built a little taller. Also, if you need the most possible height, then the Transit does have a slight advantage over the other two. Width. I don't have exact width measurements for all three of these, but here's what I've gathered. The Transit and ProMaster are a little wider and a little more suitable for building a widthwise bed. In my Transit, with inset areas in the walls by the bed, I was able to get a full 6 foot from wall to wall for the bed. I've read that the ProMaster is also friendly to a widthwise bed, but the Sprinter not as much. This one is especially going to depend on how tall you are. If you want a big bed, then orienting it lengthwise is going to make more sense no matter which van you go with, so getting something with more length would be key. All of the sizes and roof height configurations is also where these vans stand out compared to the older generation style of vans like the Ford Econoline or the Chevy Express, where only a low roof was available from the factory, and to be able to stand, you need an aftermarket fiberglass topper. In general, these vans also give you a little less usable space to work with inside, especially widthwise. Cost. Sprinters are the most expensive, and Transits and ProMasters are generally fairly close. All this will vary depending on configuration options and new versus used though. Reliability. Transits aren't without their problems, but in general they seem to be pretty reliable. I've seen many comments online where people seem to think that ProMasters are the least reliable due to the Fiat engine, but it's hard to say how much this holds true as people's experience seems to vary greatly with both of these vans. I see so many older Sprinters still on the road, so they seem like they must just run forever, but opinions are more mixed on the reliability of the newer Sprinters. Repairability. I think the Transit and ProMaster are going to be pretty equal here, and most mechanics can work on them. What I've read about Sprinters is that in general, you have to take them to a Mercedes dealership for service, and that compared to the other vans, the service and repair is more expensive. This can also make things a little tougher if you happen to break down far from a suitable shop for a Sprinter. Ground clearance and drive wheel configurations. Without any modifications to the suspension, the Transit is kind of middle of the road here. Sprinters have the most ground clearance stock, and ProMasters have kind of poor ground clearance in the rear due to the low rear axle. The ProMaster is like this because it's the only van which has front wheel drive. Some people prefer front wheel drive, some don't. For the longest time, Sprinters were the only vans that offered a four-wheel drive option from the factory. Starting with the 2020 models, the Transit now has all-wheel drive option available. Bear in mind that all-wheel drive is different than four-wheel drive, but prior to this, the only way to get a Transit with something other than two-wheel drive was through an expensive conversion from a third party. I did mention that Transits aren't without their problems. A couple notable ones in the current models were the drive shaft Guibo recall issue and the poor drainage for water over the hood. The drive shaft Guibo, or flex disc, is still something to keep an eye on, but the newest Guibo design from Ford should fix this. So if you buy a used Transit, just make sure this has been addressed by a dealer. The other issue is poor drainage of water over the hood, leading to excessive water entering into the engine bay, and in some cases, getting into the air filter box. If I'm not mistaken, the 2015 suffered from this the worst. I have a 2016 and I can tell the design isn't ideal, but there's one big thing you can do to be proactive and make sure this doesn't lead to any bigger problems. And that's to make sure the drain holes in the plastic well just under the windshield remain unclogged and allow water to properly drain to the side. I check this regularly because I've had them get clogged before from tree debris. Keeping these clear will play a big part in making sure water stays off your airbox and other parts of the engine bay. I think all the vans probably have some problems, but the Transit's the only one I own and am familiar with. After deciding a Transit would most likely be the best fit for me, the last consideration for buying a van was new versus used. I priced some new vans and it just wasn't quite in the budget, so I kept a watch on the used market. When shopping for a used vehicle, it can be a little harder to find one with all the features you want, so I prioritized what was important for me. Cruise control and a backup camera were a must. The EcoBoost engine and a limited slip rear differential would be nice to have features, and a high roof would be very nice to have, but I could maybe get away with a medium roof. In the end, what I got was a 2016 Ford Transit with a high roof and 148-inch wheelbase, not with the extended link body. It has cruise control, a backup camera, and the EcoBoost engine. It doesn't have the limited slip differential, but I was okay with that given that it checked the other boxes. I gotta say, the EcoBoost engine drives really well. Even when going through hilly areas, the engine doesn't have to rev very high. Fuel economy has been pretty decent as well. Driving conservatively on the highway, our van will average 17 to 18 miles per gallon. Our overall fuel economy on our trip has been right at 16 miles per gallon, and this includes a mix of driving on highways, through cities, down dirt roads, and a little bit of idling, although I typically don't like to leave the engine running for very long when we aren't driving. This just wastes fuel, creates more emissions, and isn't great for your engine in the long term. Overall, I've been happy with the fuel economy for a vehicle of this size, and especially given how tall it is. I purchased my van from a local brewery who had been using it as their van for picking up supplies and distributing their beer. The van was pretty banged up, so I knew it would take some extra cleanup work before getting into the actual build. And that's what the next video will be all about. Thanks again for watching this one. I hope it was informative and helpful. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.